please welcome on stage the CEO of Closed Loop, Mr. Lance Loveday.
Thank you all for being here, and I'm really pleased to be here and pleased to be able to present on topics that are near and dear to my heart. But I came up with the idea for this presentation a couple of years ago as I was realizing, gosh, we've been seeing the annual spend under management at the agency that I work with, and we've been around a while now, so how much have we spent? And I kind of did this back of the envelope calculation, and I went, oh my God, we've spent $500 million. Wow, that's a lot of money. Okay, well, that's pretty cool. And then I thought, well, all right, now if that's the media spend, what's the value of the goods and services that we've helped to sell associated with that media spend? And that got up into the billions, which I thought was pretty cool too. We've had a hand in impacting the movement of billions of dollars of goods and services over time. Wow, it never even occurred to me. I never even dreamed of doing that. But more important and more relevant for you, along the way, we've definitely learned a lot of hard lessons. And my goal today is to impart some of those lessons to you and some things that I wish I had known earlier on. Some things I wish people had told me and shared with me earlier on might have helped me avoid some of the pitfalls that I've experienced. And if I can help you avoid some of those pitfalls in your journey, I'll die a happy man, and I'll consider this talk a success. So that's my goal, is to impart some of the lessons that we've learned in spending that $500 million over time here today. So quick background on me. I am married. I have a lovely family and crazy kids. I love to ride my bike. That's kind of my primary outlet and source of exercise and stress relief. And at the end of my long bike rides, I look like this. And that, for me, is happy. I'm tired. My brain is empty. My body is exhausted. And for a person with an overactive mind, that's nirvana, right? So that's me. Enough about that. Advertising has changed even in just the last couple of years. And it just moves so quickly that it's kind of cliche to say that, right? It moves very quickly. But it really has massively changed just from an economic perspective in the last couple of years. A couple of years ago, things had started to mature to the point where people were finding their sweet spot on this trade-off between ROI and lead volume. And they were moving incrementally from there. But now things have really shifted. What we're seeing in every industry is that there's a handful of advertisers that are beating the tar out of everybody else. And they're driving better ROI and higher volume than their competitors. And we call them exponential advertisers. And the world has kind of sorted itself out into these two categories. It's those folks and everyone else. And you obviously know where you want to be if you're advertising. I think that creates opportunity. And that, for me, from an economic perspective, indicates this marketplace is not efficient. And again, creates opportunity for us as advertisers. So what are the 7 steps? Starting with step 1. The thing I wish I'd known was that this is not a level playing field. The playing field is lumpy. You got to find your place on it. So let me show you what I mean by that. Is this idea of local proxima versus global proxima. And if you're settling for fighting this battle, trying to take this hill, or if your competitor is doing that, and you're on the higher hill, playing a different game, trying to get to the top of that hill, winning looks very differently for you than for your competition, right? And you want to make sure that it's you on that high hill and that this situation isn't reversed. And what we see more often than not is that most advertisers are fighting the wrong battle, but they don't know it. They're the person on the lower hill looking at their competition who's running circles around them, asking themselves, how the heck are they doing that? And that's what you want to avoid. You want to be the exponential advertiser. You want to be the person playing the game smarter on the higher hill here, conceptually. Let me make that more concrete. To do that, you've got to think differently and let go of some of the myths around advertising. First one being that this is an efficient market. It is not efficient. It's wildly inefficient. And that is a good thing. It creates opportunity for you. Secondly, we've got to let go of our conditioning. Especially in corporate America, we're settled to go, hey, all right, well, if we're starting from here, we'll just move a little bit this way and call that success, right? We've started to turn the battleship a little bit. Incrementality is kind of the enemy with digital advertising. And we've got to let go of that, decondition ourselves. We've got to, instead of saying, let me go for the 5 or 10x, 5 or 10% opportunity, go for the 5 or 10x opportunity. Completely changes your mindset. We've got to stop viewing advertising as a cost center with a fixed budget. Instead, we've got to start looking at it as a profit center and saying, you know what? I'm going to take an investor mindset here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend as much money as I can up to this point of diminishing returns from an ROI perspective. That's a mindset shift a lot of organizations have not made yet. Again, creates opportunity for those that can think more progressively. This one can be controversial. This idea that advertising, especially digital advertising, has moved more toward valuing execution and being more associated with execution than strategy and creative. Strategy and creative are still critically important. There's no question. But if you want to really outperform and be that exponential advertiser, you've got to mind the 1,000 little details and get them all right. Get them all moving in the same direction. And you've got to be able to execute. That's a massive shift. Think about it from the Mad Men days of advertising, right? Where it was all the creative pitch and the approach and so on, and then you let the little people do all the work, right? No more. It's the quote-unquote little people now who are determining your success or failure, and we need to flip that thinking. And then lastly, this idea that, hey, average is okay, average is average, right? No. Average is being in that everyone else category and is actually losing now. If you're not amongst those exponential advertisers, you're losing now. Again, mindset shift required to get there. So if you can outthink your competition, though, learn these lessons and apply them before they do, because they don't know most of this stuff yet, that becomes a source of opportunity for you, and you can run circles around them. I said that. That was me. All right. So step one is just look beyond your current playing field. Instead of focusing on your known universe, back up, get a bigger perspective, get a sense for how your competition is doing. Are they showing up in a lot more places than you are? Are they driving a lot more volume? Does it seem like they're playing a different game? Are you scratching your head all the time going, how the hell are they doing that? That's a bad sign. If that's the case, it's time to change the game. And especially if your campaigns haven't been rebuilt in the last 1 or 2 years with all of the new features that have been released and the changes to the systems on the ad platform side, you should really evaluate completely rebuilding those campaigns. Because chances are you might be bleeding and not know it if you've not done that. And then look at some basic stats to get a sense for how you're doing relative to the competition. And use some of the third-party tools out there to get some of the competitive insights. And I'll give you some more detail on some of that stuff coming up. So that's step one. Step two, we're deluged with data from advertising, but it's hard to prioritize. And I wish someone had told me early on that you can ignore 90% of that stuff. Here's the stuff that actually matters, right? So let me give you an example of what matters. We do this exercise we call visualizing the shape of campaigns. And we develop an infographic. It looks like this. It's just a tree map diagram. But size on this diagram is representative of a campaign's spend. And color is the ROI, where blue is good and red is bad. And the deeper the shade, the better or worse it is. Dark red's very bad. We don't like dark red. But we can tell a lot just by looking at this visualization when we audit campaigns. And different patterns suggest themselves to us and suggest different possible paths forward for how to fix any problems. So just this act of looking at your campaigns in this way can be really a meaningful exercise. I pulled 6 different campaign shapes from 6 different audits that we'd done over the last couple of years. And I was struck by a number of things in looking at these, but one of the things I was struck by was just how inconsistent they are. At a time when we would think digital advertising has matured, and there'd be a little more commonality and standardization from one campaign to the next, no, still all over the map, all over the place. Again, that smells like opportunity to me. But what are the individual patterns and what might they tell us about how best to improve performance? Well, on the top left, we'd say, you know what, that's an opportunity for light pruning because there's a fair number of dark red spots there that if we just snipped them out of the campaign, we'd probably leave more budget to run on our winners and we'd improve performance overall. Straightforward. Bottom left, well, there's a lot of red there. We need to do a lot of pruning in order to help that one to work. There's some pockets of opportunity, some blue that's working, but we need to get rid of a lot of that red because we're bleeding all over the place there. Top middle, yeah, we probably need to restructure that one for more granularity. There's too many big boxes, right? And we need to get more granular with our targeting. And we probably need to uncover some more blue areas as well, and hopefully some dark blue. Bottom middle, bloodbath, start over, right? I mean, if 90% of your budget is going to 4 campaigns, you're probably not being granular enough with your targeting. And certainly not if you've got that much red showing up in your campaigns. Top right, we'd say, hey, that's pretty good. You're pretty granular, and there's a lot of blue. Hard to argue with that, right? That's what we should strive for. Almost never see it, but that's what good looks like, right? That's what success looks like. And in the lower right, we'd say, you know what, it just kind of presents to us as kind of blah. We need to get a little more granular, but there isn't a lot of dark blue, there isn't a lot of dark red. This feels like average in a lot of different ways, and we probably just need to do a little restructuring, but more importantly, probably just reallocate spend, because a lot of our spend is going to kind of meh campaigns up here. So that's the first thing. Just take a look at the shape of the campaigns. Think differently about it, and think about how you're allocating budget in that way. Because the reality is that there's all kinds of opportunity to dictate where your spend goes out there. I think the conventional wisdom, though, that a lot of us live with is that, oh, you know what, I'm constrained by inventory, right? There isn't enough potential addressable audience out there, and that's rarely the case. There's usually a lot more volume potential out there and a lot more levers you can pull. You've got to just think differently about it. So that's step 2. Do a quick health check. Figure out what matters. And visualize the shape of your accounts, and then look at some basic stats to see if there are ways to improve. If your search click-through isn't greater than 1%, that's probably a red flag. You should consider rebuilding. If you don't have your remarketing audiences built out, if you don't have at least 3 ads per ad group, at least 4 ad extensions, and you don't see quality scores improving, and I'll talk more about quality scores coming up, those might be red flags for you as well, just on a basic level. So that's step 2. Understand where you're starting from, and do a quick health check and visualize your campaigns. Step 3. This is like heresy for an agency person to say this, right? Don't spend more? What agency says don't spend more? But seriously, you should not default to spending more as a first next step to get more volume. Instead, maximize your efficiency first, because spending more just guarantees diminishing returns. So instead of just spending more and pulling that easy lever, which Google loves, by the way, instead empower yourself to maximize your efficiency. Let me give you a more granular example. So we were looking at the campaign level down before. Now we're going to look really at the really super granular keyword level up. And we're looking here at individual keywords where the length of the line in the left column here is the impression share for that keyword, the exact match impression share. How often is that keyword, is an ad being shown for that keyword relative to how often it could be shown? What's your share? How often are you actually showing up for when that keyword is searched? The color of the bar is the ROI. Again, blue is good, red is bad. And what we're looking for are short blue bars. Short bars indicate there's upside opportunity. There's more impressions I could be buying for that keyword. Blue is I'm getting good ROI on that keyword. So if there are more impressions available, I want them, right? When you look at things this way, and we've highlighted those opportunities in yellow here, you look at things this way, you ask yourself, well, wait a minute. If I've got room to run on these keyword areas where I'm clearly winning, why am I spending money on all these other keywords where I'm not winning as much? Again, it's kind of a different mindset. What Google will tell you is, no, bid on all these terms. You got to have kind of a portfolio theory approach, right? Let us diffuse your spend across this whole portfolio of keywords. And I would advocate for you to empower yourself and say, you know what? No. I'm not going to let you tell me how to spend my money. I'm going to laser target the most valuable inventory and ensure I'm maxing out my winners here, and I'm going to improve my ROI by doing that. It's a pretty granular thing to be able to get to. It feels like a little geeky, a little detailed. Critically important. This can have a massive swing. We see these types of opportunities all the time. So that's how, it's at least one example of how you buy the most valuable traffic first. That's one of our favorite phrases. Make sure you're maxing out your winners first before you let budget fall to lower performing areas. How else can you do it? Geography. This is one of the biggest underutilized optimization opportunities in most accounts. So same concept here. Size of the bubble is spend, color is ROI. What does it look like for this client? Well, there's this clustering of lower performing secondary markets in the Midwest. Why? Hell, I don't know why. But while I take the time to figure it out, why can't I just put a bid modifier on that and bid down those geographies by 10, 15, 20%? Again, let more money run in other areas where I'm winning more. And maybe that ends up being a 5-point lift for me in ROI overnight with one simple optimization lever. You string up enough 5 and 10-point gains, pretty soon you're talking about real money. And we see almost nobody taking advantage of this optimization lever. It's one of the most underutilized optimization levers we see out there. Big fans of it. But you've got to see the data in this way for it to start to really make sense for you and to be able to empower yourself. Again, different patterns play themselves out for different types of campaigns. But the idea is to figure out where you're winning or losing and bid up or down accordingly, using geography as your filter. That can be a big, big deal. What's another one? Match type. I love match types. All right. Who here knows what match types are in Google AdWords? All right, I'm seeing half, and I'm seeing some of that, which is maybe I know some of it. All right. So three ways you can target ads to a keyword in Google. Exact match is the most specific. It says only show my ads when this exact keyword is searched on, right? Makes sense. Then there's phrase match. Phrase match is a little bit looser. Well, show that one, and also show plurals and other phrases that include that core term. That's phrase match, right? Oh, that makes sense, okay. Then there's broad match. Broad match is, well, show those keywords too, but now show me synonyms and other things that Google thinks might be indicative of that searcher's intent, right? But they don't disclose exactly what their matching algorithm is. So you're kind of empowering Google at that point to really spend your money for you with broad match. So, given that definition, objectively, and ignoring what's on the screen, if you could only spend money in one of those areas, which one would you want to spend money on? Which one? Nobody? Come on, no? This is a very polite Midwest crowd. I like it. You're not like Canada polite, but what was that?
Exact.
Exact, there it is. You'd want to spend it on exact, because that's the most precise form of targeting. That gives you the most control. It says, only show my ads for these keywords that I tell you to show the ad for, right? But again, that almost never ends up being the case. We see patterns like this. Exact match performs the best, which makes sense, but most of the spend, that's the bar chart, so the cost per lead is lowest, but the spend is majority on broad match, and we see it play out time and again across campaigns. Exact match performs the best, but most of the spend goes to broad. And Google encourages this, by the way. And you have to think about it from their perspective. They don't, Google, you know, I have kind of a love-hate with Google, and I don't want to badmouth them too much here, but you have to appreciate that they're a big public company, and they've got all that comes along with that. They've got shareholders to satisfy, and they've got growth goals to hit. And as a result, their interests aren't always aligned with your interests as the advertiser. So Google only has so much of that most valuable inventory, and they would rather give a little bit to everybody in order to keep everybody spending a little bit more over time. And you as the advertiser, I think, need to think differently about the relationship with Google and say, you know what? No, I'm going to view what Google tells me somewhat skeptically, and I'm instead going to do my darndest to make sure that I'm getting the best inventory for me, because this is a competitive marketplace. Yes?
Quick question. Are these charts like this and the other one that you showed with the bar graphs? Are those ones, thank you, are those ones that Google provides? Like,
No.
are we able to go in and do this in-depth analysis? No.
Great
Okay.
question. Sadly, no. No, they do provide you the data, but they also, they provide reams of data. It's hard to suss out what's most important. So we actually built our own data tool, and then we hooked up Tableau as our visualization tool to that to generate these visualizations.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. So we see patterns like this. Exact match performs the best, but gets the least budget. It's kind of crazy. So the idea here, though, is to empower yourself and say, well, if this pattern holds true for you, if exact match performs the best, but your exact match impression share is low-ish, we say anywhere south of 80%, well then just reallocate more spend to exact match. Turn off maybe some of your broad match terms, let more budget fall to exact match terms, and you'll boost your ROI immediately by doing that. This can be game-changing just by itself, but it's a different way of viewing campaign success. I love this one. We recommend spending 60 to 80% of your budget on exact match and letting the rest fall to phrase or call modified broad match. It flips the traditional spend allocation on its head. Instead of letting only 20 or 30% of your budget go to exact, we recommend trying to get that number up to 60 to 80%. A lot of manual work required behind the scenes to make that happen. Totally worth it. That's how you outplay the competition. And we just published this actually. We finally quantified match types and their relationship with quality scores, I'm going to talk about coming up. And the important takeaway for now is that exact match, for this is just one account, exact match had 2x the quality score of phrase and broad match. And I'll explain more what that means coming up. The takeaway here is that exact match, 2x the quality score. All right. So step 3, buy the most valuable traffic first. A number of ways you can go about that. We've walked through those. Now, I get to rant a little bit about display advertising. Who's engaged in display advertising? Oh, a number of people. Okay, very good. All right. So I gotta be careful here. Display advertising has its role, but I think it may have jumped the shark a little bit and is getting a little too much attention and spend allocation. And so what we're seeing is that people are, bless you, people are measuring success for display differently and by a looser set of rules than they are for other forms of advertising. And in some ways, they're really stretching the attribution models they're using. So who's familiar with view-through attribution? The same display folks. All right. So for those not familiar, click-based attribution is as in the search ads, right? Someone clicks the ad, converts on my website, that click gets credit for that conversion. That makes sense. View-through attribution, though, means that an ad might get credit just on the basis of having that ad served up on a page that the user visited, and not immediately before converting, but sometimes 2 weeks, 4 weeks prior to that conversion event. So you have to ask yourself objectively, did the mere act of having seen a display ad on day 1 have any impact on my behavior 30 days later? Probably not, quite honestly. That's a stretch. Yet, some view-through attribution models would give that ad that may or may not have even been seen, because Google themselves says that 50% of all ad impressions are never seen by a human. You have to think about that. Ad impressions are counted when the ad is loaded. So if an ad loads low on a page that you don't even scroll down and see, the impression counts, even though you as a human have not actually even seen it. So half of all ad impressions are never seen by a human to begin with. So we've got to be somewhat skeptical about this just on that basis. And then they're getting credits just for having seen the ad in some cases. I think it's a flawed model in some cases. Having said that, display does have a role in branding and awareness and top-of-funnel activities. It can work from a direct response perspective, but you've got to hold it to the same standards as other forms of advertising, in my view. Programmatic advertising is a great improvement and I think has its place, but isn't the magic bullet that it's been made out to be in some cases. And I just in general think that paid social has far more game-changing potential than display does, for what that's worth. And I'm more than happy to have that conversation with anybody afterwards if you want to go deeper on that. So that's my rant on display. The recommendations are just be wary about it. In general, for direct response campaigns, we're saying don't spend more than 15 or 20% of budget on display. Standardize on one or two display platforms. It's usually Google Display Network plus one other. That's usually enough in order not to spread yourself too thin. I'm really passionate about ensuring people are using good creative. If you're going to invest in all the technology and tracking and serving costs and all of this to run ads, and people get kind of geeked on that, you know, we see people go to all this effort, but then they deploy kind of blah creative. It just makes no sense to me. Better to spend a few more dollars, a few more days crafting really good creative that's worth delivering to people in order to get a multiplier effect on your campaign effectiveness. And then, as I talked about, separate your view-through conversions from your click-through conversions and value those differently in your reporting for what that's worth. Yes, sir? Yeah. Do you mind repeating the question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's any benefit to viewing it through the view-through conversion lens, or is that just a trick that so they can say we have so many more conversions and everything's great?
I think there is some benefit,
Okay.
but I think you have to minimize it. So what we will do for what it's worth is we'll count a 1-day window for view-through conversions, and then a 28 or 30-day click-through window. And then sometimes in the attribution models that Google and others use, display ads will get their proportional percentage in the attribution model as well. But in general, a 1-day view-through window, roughly 4-week click-through window is what we try to standardize on across the board. Great question. All right, I like it. I like when it's more of a conversation than a presentation, so keep them coming. All right, that's display. Number 5, I said I'd talk about quality score. I love, love, love quality score. All right, I'm going to get a little bit geeky here. It's the afternoon, but it's time for a little algebra. So we're going to do some basic math, but don't worry, I've already done most of the math up here. So, quality score is critically important in your success with Google. And if you've heard about it, maybe you've heard too much, you might be rolling your eyes a little bit. I get it. I have been there. But we've recently done some research with quality score that has kind of reopened my eyes to just how freaking important it is. So let's understand it. Quality score has a few different components. One of them is ad rank. Ad rank is important because it determines where in the search listings your ad shows up. What order do the ads appear? So ad rank determines ad position. The higher your ad rank, the higher your ad position. And the higher your position, the more traffic potential because people click on ads closer to the top of the page than the bottom, right? All right, fair enough. How does ad rank get calculated then? Simple. It is simply your max bid multiplied by your quality score. So your traffic potential is determined by the amount you can pay and also the relevance of your ad as determined by Google in the quality score that they assign you to each of your placements. Now, if you want to increase your traffic potential, you have a choice. You can either pay more, which obviously costs you money, or you can improve your relevance, which is free. Which would you rather do? I'm hoping with the free one, right? All right, let's do the free one. Let's improve quality score. It's a no-brainer. But again, most people don't think this way because they don't understand why this is such a big deal. So I'm going to demystify this for you. So let's run through it real quick. Say you've got these 4 ads showed up in this order. You got your max bid multiplied by your quality score determines your ad rank, right? Your ad rank determines the ad position. All make sense so far? Yeah. All right. Now the next question is, what's the cost? What is your actual CPC that you end up paying? Here's where it gets really cool. The CPC is the ad rank of the person below you. It's 16 divided by your quality score, 10, plus 1 cent. So the top advertiser in this example pays the actual cost per click of $1.61. And you go, all right, well, that's kind of cool. But the kicker is they're paying the least of anyone else in this, for this keyword, and getting the most traffic. That's why I love quality score so much. A high quality score allows you to defy the laws of economics, right? It allows you to get more volume at a lower cost. That's why it's so powerful. This is an extreme example, admittedly. This high quality score is enabling this advertiser to beat the pants off their competition. But every ad auction runs through this way, and this is how the ads get served up, and this is how Google decides how much you pay and what order the ads show up in. If you can improve your quality scores, you can win more of these, and you can outperform the competition. That's why we love quality scores so much. It's a big deal. So the question then becomes, well, okay, what's mine? What's my quality score? Where am I starting from here? And to do that, we put together a simple distribution to show, all right, how many keywords have a quality score of 1, 2, 3, and so on. And we usually get a pattern that looks like this. It's weighted, unfortunately, a little more to the lower end. And that would, so we see this, we do these audits all the time, and it's kind of like, you've seen the Matrix, right? People like can just read the code. Same with us. We see this, we go, oh my God, it's a bloodbath, right? And most people go, dude, it's a bar chart. This tells us that there's a ton of upside available in these campaigns, because that's a relatively low quality score. We see patterns all over the place, but the first one's obviously bad. The second one, I'd say slightly less bad, and then it's actually pretty good. It's weighted more to the right side than the left, right? But I'd say 90% of the time, what we see are scenarios 1 and 2. And it kind of breaks my heart, because it means people are leaving a lot of money on the table, and more often than not, they're kind of blind to it. It's kind of crept up on them slowly over time. And again, this is how Google makes a lot of money. It's by people not really being fully aware of what's going on behind the scenes sometimes. So the next question is, all right, well, can I actually do anything about it? And the answer is yes. I pulled this case study from one of our clients. Before we took over the distribution on the left, after we took over, about 3 months, it took us to improve quality scores by this amount. So we went from a weighted average quality score of 3.8 to 5.2. And on an absolute basis, you'd go, dude, that still sucks. Yeah, it does. These are low numbers, admittedly. But it is a 37% improvement in quality scores. Still more room to run. We want to improve on it if we can. But a 37% improvement is massive, because those ad auctions that we just looked at are generally won and lost by a lot less than 37%. So if you can move your quality scores up 10, 15, 20, anywhere close to 37%, it can have a massive impact on your campaigns. And in that same time frame, we doubled lead volume without increasing spend for that client, largely because of what we were able to do with this quality score increase. It's a big, big deal. So I love quality scores for that reason. It's kind of like cheating, honestly, if you can improve your quality scores because of the multiplier effect you get on both your volume potential and reducing your costs. So use quality score to gain an unfair advantage. That's the recommendation. Do that distribution analysis, and if you find that your quality scores on average are low, treat it like an emergency, because it kind of is. So that's the recommendation there. Number 6, optimize to deeper funnel metrics. This is more appropriate for lead generation clients than e-commerce, but it has a role for e-commerce as well. So most people have a sales funnel, looks something like this, and most people are optimizing to what we call the front-end metric, right? It's usually some form of a cost per lead metric. We advocate for optimizing to deeper in the funnel, if at all possible, and here's why. Again, I'm going to do a little math here. If you were evaluating campaign A and campaign B on a cost per lead basis, in this example, you'd conclude campaign A, clear winner, right? lower cost per lead. But if the leads from campaign B actually end up converting deeper down the funnel at a higher rate, they're higher quality leads, well, now your analysis changes. Now all of a sudden campaign B is winning. And if that pattern continues on down the funnel, you can end up in a situation where it's a massive performance difference between these campaigns. And what you thought was a winner on a cost per lead basis is a 5x loser from a sale perspective. Most companies don't have their campaigns instrumented to be able to see this and know this. If you can do this, even one step deeper than you are now, you're going to be playing the game smarter than 90% of advertisers out there, and you're going to be spending a lot smarter than they are. And here's how it plays out for one of our clients. This is how their spend mix changed year over year, because we ended up changing from optimizing to lead to optimizing to SQL right at the beginning of 2016. And what we found is that those leads that are at the very sliver top of 2015, we thought those were leads we couldn't afford to buy. They're just too expensive. The keywords are too expensive. We're not buying those. Can't afford it. But when we did the back-end analysis, we realized, oh my God, those perform so well. It's totally worth buying those leads. We want more of them. So we ended up shifting the mix dramatically towards those. And those cheap leads, the light blue ones, we've been overpaying for them. We thought they were cheap. Turns out they were cheap for a reason. They didn't perform nearly as well. So it changed how we thought about an allocated budget and bids dramatically, just 1 year over the next. Same client challenged us and said, well, okay, if we can optimize to lead quality, can we optimize to company size too? Can you drive more large company leads to our sales force? Because they're telling us they hate these small company leads they get. So we said, all right. Most of the time you don't do that with advertising, but if we can, we will. And we started passing that through. We started capturing company size on the lead form, passing it through to the CRM such that we could see it and associate that back and start to optimize on that basis. And we drove far fewer small company leads over time, far more enterprise and mid-market leads. Salesforce loved it, changed the perception of marketing and the value of the leads we were driving. They ended up working those leads that much harder. We got into a virtuous cycle, right? It was brilliant. And that's what enabled us to increase lead volume for these folks. That's sales qualified lead volume by 6x over the course of a couple of years. That's how you do it. You get all these moving parts moving together. And that's how it happens. So how do you do that? You create trackable events that you can pass through to your CRM. So you can do those long-term look-backs and say, which traffic sources drove this, and can we allocate more budget to those traffic sources that are driving higher quality leads for us? Last thing, audit ruthlessly. You've got to have a third-party perspective on these campaigns. Most of the time, the spend has come up on digital advertising campaigns to the point where you're spending real money, and it pays to have an objective third-party set of eyes on these things. Because it can help save a lot of money and improve your ROI. A full audit is going to look at a lot of different areas. I've listed a number of them out here. But the way to think about it is kind of like a health exam, right? Possibly unpleasant, can absolutely save your ass, right? Don't be that person who won't go see the doctor, right? It can be unpleasant to sometimes, you're told things you don't want to hear, but it's really important to have your campaigns audited every so often at least. So I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions for me, happy to take some now, or I'll see you out in the expo hall afterward. Any questions?
Okay, we have one question before we go for break.
One question.
How do you improve your quality score for conquesting campaign as you are not able to add any your competitor's name on your ads or landing pages?
Great question. How do you improve it for a conquesting campaign? You've got to get creative about what you're promoting. And I think the asset or the offer that you're making, it can't just be we're an alternative to others in this space. So if you can create a content asset that is truly valuable in their decision-making process, that often plays pretty well. So whether it's a buyer's guide or similar, something that helps them in that moment of trying to choose between different vendors. I can give you some other specific ideas afterward if you'd like on that one. It sounds like we only had time for one question, so thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Okay. So now it's time for